wow, like the lack of self-respect you have for yourself to put up with some of these things and put up with some of this rhetoric, and especially saying it to yourself. I would extrapolate it to say, would you ever say these things that you say to yourself to your classroom, to any kid in your classroom? If you did, you would get fired.
Welcome to the Teacher Money Show, the podcast dedicated to helping teachers navigate your unique financial challenges and unlock your financial superpowers. I'm your host, Sean Morgan, a full-time teacher. That's right, I teach every day just like you, and personal financial coach. And I'm here to help every teacher, whether you're a seasoned teacher looking for fresh insights or a new educator navigating your first paycheck, to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life. That came out wrong. A richer wallet, classroom, and life. The contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice, and neither I nor my guests are engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should not act upon this information without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. I'm super excited to have Bernadette Joy on the podcast today. Bernadette is a financial coach who went from hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to a millionaire in not a very long period of time. And she's the author of the new book, Crush Your Money Goals, which we're going to be talking about today at a very specific granular level. We're going to talk about the parts that I think are most valuable to you educators as you are trying to shift your mindset and get yourself in a position to start crushing your money goals. Bernadette, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Bernadette, I have been reading your book and I love the mindset pieces. So you're spending so much time at the beginning of the book saying it's not about the math so much as it's about the mind, right? And the mind part is the thing that matters much more than the math in your money, even though we don't think about it that way. It takes a lot more effort to learn the math pieces, but once you do, if you don't have the mind pieces in place, the math places aren't going to get you where you need to go. And the things I really want to talk to you about start with this idea of self-worth and how self-worth goes into your money story and your ability to grow wealth. So what does self-worth mean in this context, and why does it matter in your money?
Yeah, wow, you really read the book. I am really grateful to have this conversations, particularly with educators. I was really ecstatic to be invited to your show because teachers are a profession that's near and dear to my heart, and self-worth in particular is a topic that I seem to continue to battle with my teacher clients and students, because the phrase often comes up, "I am just a teacher. I'm just a teacher. I just make teacher salary. Like this isn't possible for me because everyone knows that y'all are not paid your worth, right?" And so what self-worth really matters to me in this context is going all the way back to my psychology degree. And when I was graduating from college, I had two paths. I was either going to go into corporate America, into Fortune 500 company, or go to Teach for America. And I uh, due to my parents' pressure, I went the corporate route. And I always wonder what my life would have been like if I had gone the teaching route instead. And that's why I love what I do now. But what I will say is really important, why I give you all this context, is that you can become wealthy if you decide that your time and your energy is worth more than what people are willing to trade dollars for. And specifically, when we talk about self-worth, it goes hand in hand with the net worth piece. So in the book, I talk a lot about understanding your net worth. But I promise you, I have met many, many, many people who have very high net worths and still have very little self-worth. So what does that really even mean? It means that they think that the dollars are going to fill in the gaps for where they feel inadequate, where they feel like they're unloved, where they feel like they're not valuable. And yet, I think as a teacher and as an educator, you have one of the greatest gifts that most people don't have, which is like every day you're getting a reminder and real-time feedback of just how much value you're putting into this world and how you're like changing lives every day. But I really wish that more teachers would match up this idea of self-worth with what is the actual value they're bringing to other people's lives versus a reflection of what their paycheck says. And in the book, we talk a lot about how we could reconcile that difference between what your self-worth is, even if your net worth doesn't match what you think it should be.
Yeah, you know, I say this at the end of every show. I say, as a teacher, you're already rich. Your wallet just needs to catch up. And that's just a
I
reminder
love
of
that.
this self-worth. You already have the worth there. And then if you can just put the right principles into place with your money, then that's going to get there and you're going to have that equally high self-worth and net worth that match where you're at. And I love how you talk about the emptiness of people who are just like, you know, money, 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 and they don't have the why behind it. They don't have the drive that's getting them to a good spot internally. And those things often go, you often have the self-worth as a teacher, and the net worth is so much easier to bring to it than the self-worth is. So I think that having those things go hand in hand for teachers is so important. And like you say, it's lacking in very many teachers, just not understanding that they have the self-worth because they're assuming that their net worth is a reflection of that self-worth.
That's right.
So there are three ways that you talk about in the book that you can work on this idea of self-worth and net worth. And these are being worthy of wealth and being capable of getting wealth and then respecting yourself. These ideas kind of go into this idea of self-worth. So I want to talk through each of those. What does it mean to be worthy of wealth? And why does this belief matter? And I love how you have this teacher context. So if you can really, you know, speak to like why understanding that you're worthy of wealth matters to a teacher is really what I'm going for here.
I will say, as someone who is an aspiring teacher still, I still think I have a lot to learn as an educator myself, is there is still this consistent notion that you cannot make good money and also serve people well. Like it's one or the other. And that's honestly what was told to me. Like I ended up choosing to go into corporate because my parents literally said to me, you're not going to make money as a teacher. So, and money is more important, right? As first generation immigrant, you know, parents will often say to their kids. Um, and so just this idea of like, I am worthy, I deserve to be wealthy is a very hard thing for people to say, especially people in the education space. Like, how many people would comfortably say to someone else, like in the break room, I deserve to be wealthy. I deserve to be wealthy. I can venture it would be very uncomfortable for most people. And so you might not get to the point where you feel comfortable saying that out loud in the break room at your job, but at least sounds corny being able to say it to yourself in the mirror and say, you know what? I work really hard. I have 30 kids in my classroom and I am changing their life every day. Why don't I deserve to have a wealthy life, right? Like that's something that is really important. And so in the book I talk a lot about I sometimes like I got self-conscious when I was writing this book. I'm like, are people gonna think I'm like nuts, right? The fact that I talk to myself so often. But the biggest thing that I have learned recently is that most of the things, especially teachers, that we're telling ourselves are lies that we've been told. Saying that there's not enough money in the world is a lie. Saying that money is hard to come by, in my opinion, is actually a lie. The skill sets that you have as a teacher are so valuable that you absolutely deserve to be wealthy. I tell people all the time, I love like back when I was a recruiter, I loved hiring teachers because like if you can handle a classroom of like 30 10 year olds, I promise you can handle like four, you know, older dudes in a boardroom. Right? You know? So that first piece of saying I deserve to be wealthy, I am worthy of wealth. That one step is one of the hardest steps that people have to do, which is why I front load the book with that, because I remind people the book that I wrote was for people who want to reach financial freedom, not just settle for less.
You know, this negative self-talk is, we don't feel like we're crazy to give ourselves negative self-talk in our head, but we feel like we're crazy to say positive things out loud to ourselves, right? It doesn't make any sense, right? But saying it out loud, you know, we know as educators that the more parts of your body you engage in something, the more like real it is, the easier it is to remember, right? So if you say it, write it, read it as you're doing like the whole thing, if you get every sense involved in your, you know, in your learning, then you're more likely to have it stick, right? So when you're saying things in your head that are negative, that's less likely to stick than if you can speak things out loud to yourself, write it down, right? And make it real by actually putting it out into the world, because that's going to wire your brain again in a positive way. And it's so crazy how powerful positive thinking is on your ability to grow wealth, right? When you say, I'm a teacher, I guess I'm going to be poor because I'm a teacher, that is going to lead to a life of poverty because you have decided to be poor. But if you say, I'm a teacher and I deserve to be wealthy, that's going to lead to a life of wealth. And there's just no way around it, really. If you are putting it out to the world that you are going to have the good things, the wealthy things come into your life. And I think that's just so powerful.
Thank you.
So now that we've said, I am worthy of wealth, what about being capable of getting wealthy? And why do we need to have this belief, and what does that look like?
Okay. So again, I love that the audience is our teachers today, right? There is again this lie out in the world that says that investing is complicated, building wealth is complicated. And I actually was going through my old videos of when I started doing Crush Your Money Goals. I launched Crush Your Money Goals in 2020. And I had one talk that I did before the entire world shut down in real life, and I have the video from it. And in the video, I tell people, if you can do fourth grade math, you can become wealthy, because all you really need is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And so if you're someone who teaches fourth grade math, oh my gosh, like the sky is the limit for you, right? And so there's this idea that, I'm not capable of becoming wealthy because I don't know or understand compound interest, or I don't understand what an IRA is, or like nobody ever taught me taxes. There's like all of this stuff out there. First of all, um, there's plenty of tools now that, like I always joke with people, like, I'm old enough, I'm turning 40, where like my teachers used to say, you need to learn this because you're not gonna have a calculator in your pocket like anytime. And it's like, okay, well, teachers didn't see that one coming, didn't see that one coming, right? There's all of these things that are going to take this minutia of the tasks, right, out of building wealth, of like the math part of it. The math part is not what's hard, right? The hard part is deciding, is making a choice to say you are capable of building wealth, and it's not complicated. So as a prime example, like for me, I teach a class which is really great for teachers specifically. It's like investing for busy professionals. And people assume that you're gonna have to spend a lot of time like analyzing stocks and like analyzing like what an index fund is and whatever to become wealthy. And I show people my own portfolio, and it is like so basic. Like it takes one class really for me to teach, like my kind of very basic portfolio, and have $1 million. I have $1 million, right? So when people are thinking, oh, I need to learn, this is what makes me crazy. I had a teacher, true story. It was like, I need to learn options, like stock options, in order to be able to like become wealthy. I'm like, no, 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 no. You need to just max out your 403b, my friend. Like that's all you got to do. And so when I say I am capable, this is where I think teachers are uniquely qualified to become wealthy, is because as a psychology degree, I learned that we actually don't multitask. We're actually monotaskers. We just do a lot of tasks in rapid succession. We're not actually multitasking. We're like going between different things and going back and forth. You know who are the best at that? Freaking teachers, right? And so I say that in the sense of like, if you were able to get a job in a school as a teacher, you already have all the skill sets that I usually have to spend so much time teaching other people how to do. You know, fourth grade math, you know how to manage multiple tasks, you know how to analyze information and be able to implement it, right? Those are the basic skills to be wealthy. Do you need to learn complicated stock trading? Do you need to learn how to syndicate real estate deals? No. You need to know the fundamentals and do those well first. And then once you master those, then we talk about the more complicated stuff. But most people are not doing that.
And you don't have to learn the more complicated stuff if you don't want to. That's the beautiful thing. Like people who want to be just, lowercase w wealthy. Not talking about, having a golden toilet in your house wealthy, but you just like lowercase w wealthy. right? Which is, I think, the goal for most people. No one really like says like, I need a private jet to be happy, right? You just need to have enough money to not have to worry about things so much. If you want to have that, you don't have to have all these crazy things, right? Just the very basic, simple, way to grow your wealth is huge. But I love this idea of being capable of getting wealthy because it's something that, like, yeah, you can say I deserve it, but then I think the next hurdle is that teachers just say, well, it's not possible because I'm a teacher, right? But it is possible, right? That's the crazy thing. Like, we say I'm underpaid, I'm a teacher, I'm poor, but I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings here, but you aren't poor as a teacher, right? Teachers, when we start out in a lot of places, we are paid pretty low, but that salary that I'm making as a teacher is higher than what, someone who's flipping burgers is getting paid, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We go up and up and up. We get more money over time. As you get more education as well, you get more money. Teachers are average income earners. And I know no one wants to be average, okay? We want to be above average, but you're an average income earner. You're not a low income earner. The reason it hurts is because other people who have your same educational attainment are getting paid more. But if you're getting paid as much as you're getting paid to flip burgers, you'd feel pretty good about yourself. So we need to just keep in perspective that you do have an average amount of money, which means that you should be able to get wiggle room if you put your mind to it, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
put these skills that you have to work, you can get the wiggle room necessary to be capable of generating wealth, right? To be capable of using this fourth grade math to become wealthy. And it's not easy, right? I mean, it'd be way easier if we were making $200,000 a year, but it's possible, right? It's definitely possible. And I just feel like reminding ourselves it is possible on my teacher salary to generate wealth is huge. And it's something that I think too many people just assume without even putting the work and the numbers and the thought into it, that it's just not going to be possible.
Yes. And I would actually argue, I would take a step further and saying as a teacher, it is more probable for you to become wealthy because again, you've attained a certain level of education and a certain skill set that you are able to teach skills to other people, which is not a skill set that everybody has. And I will also say that one of the reasons I did not become a teacher is because I lack the one core skill set that I think teachers need to have, which is patience. And so that is the thing that actually prohibits most people from becoming wealthy is their lack of patience. And I have never seen a more patient human being than a teacher, right? So when I say that it is even more probable for you to become wealthy, you have a foundation that is already leaps and bounds past the majority of human beings on earth here. And so rather than saying, oh, it's not possible for me, yeah, let's take the step to say it's possible, but saying like, wow, actually, I have the tools and I have the skill sets and I have the talents that puts me in an even better position than a lot of my friends who are even working in corporate, who are even working in some of those bigger jobs because I have the patience, I have the social skill sets, I have the organizational skill sets that are fundamental to becoming a really good wealth manager.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the patience thing hits home. Some of the worst financial decisions I made was from lack of patience. And something
Same.
I'd probably be a better teacher if I had more patience too. So I think that's a great thing. So if you're one of those patient, kindergarten teachers who are getting poked and getting glue all over you and glitter all over the room and you're fine, you're gonna be great. You're
Yeah,
just
you're
gonna
you're you're set. You're good.
Okay, so the third thing is about respecting yourself. Now, this one I was like, respecting yourself. This is interesting. Like the others two, I was like, okay, I see that, but then you said you need to respect yourself. And this one like made me pause for a moment, but I really liked it. So you can talk about what it means to respect yourself and how respecting yourself helps you build wealth.
I'm taking a deep breath because I'm about to get on my little soapbox right now. Is um Here's what I'll say again with the context of teachers, and it goes a little bit into the self-talk thing, but I have framed it pretty harshly sometimes to people to say like, wow, like the lack of self-respect you have for yourself to put up with some of these things and put up with some of this rhetoric and especially saying it to yourself. I would extrapolate it to say, would you ever say these things that you say to yourself to your classroom, to any kid in your classroom. If you did, you would get fired from your job, right? But it is okay for you to say it to yourself. To me, that is a lack of respect. You would never say it to another human being, but for some reason we think it's okay to say it to ourselves. And so in the book, when I say you need to respect yourself, like that actually, and I think you caught on it. Most people get caught off guard when I say that to people, like, wow, that just is so disrespectful for you to be saying, I am not worthy. I am not capable. I will always be poor. Imagine you said to a 10-year-old, you are not capable. You are not worthy. You will always be poor. You would be fired from your job. So I want people to hear me today on this podcast. If you are saying stuff that you would never say to a kid in your classroom, then you need to start thinking to yourself, well, like, is that really? It's beyond negative self-talk. This is a lack of respect for a human being. That human being just happens to be me. And so I'm really grateful for platforms like this, because we don't often get to have these conversations. Because when I am in a room with, I'll give you a prime example. I teach financial classes with a company called Skill Pop, and Skill Pop, they teach like all sorts of things, not just personal finance, like watercolors and sewing and all this other stuff. And so there's a lot of teachers that come in both as attendees, because they like teachers just love all this art and craft stuff, but they also hire a lot of teachers to be the managers of these classes, because they're so used to doing it with kids, right? So they're like the perfect people. And how many of those class managers like have said to me like some version of that, some version of, I'm not capable, I'm not worthy, I only make this much money? Because they'll sit in one of my classes and they're like, I get a lot of people who actually want to be the class manager for my class because they get to basically take my class for free, right? And so they're like sitting there learning about investing. And then I had a teacher recently who came and said to me, and she said those things, I only make this much money, and I'm only a fifth grade teacher. I don't know where I'm going to get money to put money into my IRA. And I had said to her, I'm like, well, what would you tell she's a high school teacher. What would you tell one of your high schoolers if they came to you and said that? Right? Like, and it put her on pause, right? Like that we have a lower expectation for ourselves than we do for the students that we teach. Like that's, first of all, like there's definitely some incongruency to that. We want to be the role models of like what we want these kids to aspire to be. And even if they never hear it, I promise you the people around you can feel it, right? So if you're the teacher, I have one of my favorite teachers. I'll always remember, oh my God, I can't remember his name right now. But he was my economics teacher in high school, and he was South African. So he had this really cool like South African accent. And he was like just kind of like nerdy. And like now I think about it, I was like, oh, he's such an adult. He's probably like 27 at the time, something like that. And every time he walked into a room, like people just wanted to listen to him, partly because he had a South African accent and he sounded cool, but because he just came into a room, and every time he came into a room, he was so confident. He was so confident. So when I say self-respect for yourself and for your finances and for the money that you bring in, that that vibe that you bring into then doing your budget and then deciding your investments and all that stuff, it will pay dividends literally and figuratively, because you are saying, I respect myself enough to not keep accepting this narrative that doesn't serve me.
I love this idea, and I love how it's kind of like a flip on an old saying. It's treat yourself the way you want to treat others, right? Because that's really what you're trying to do. Like, you are good people. I'm just assuming across the board, if you're a teacher and you're listening to this podcast, you're a good person. You treat others with respect. So treat yourself that way too. And I think that's just such a powerful thing to remember. Like, if I would not say this to one of my students, I shouldn't be saying it to myself, right? And if you're saying things to your students that are the things you're saying in your head, then it's time to take a step back and really, work on that too. But I mean, like these are things that are all about just getting your mind right, or getting your mind in a place where you are able to start getting your value, start getting your worth, because you're not holding yourself back in your mind anymore. And I love this teacher that's just so confident, because one of my goals for helping teachers, the reason I want to help teachers so much, other than teachers deserve to be wealthy and they deserve to live a great life, is if you teach a teacher how to be financially successful, it will naturally help their students as well, right? These kids that come to us in poverty, right? That who don't have a coat in the winter or aren't getting dinner at night, or just whatever the problems that they're encountering are, they are being told day in and day out at home, just through silent messages, that they're going to be poor for the rest of their life. But if they can see someone who the society script says is supposed to be poor, who's saying with the way they live, no, I'm going to be rich, and you can too. The power that can have on a student is immeasurable, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had a great unit that I got to teach at a school I was at, where we read The Richest Man in Babylon together, because I got to choose the book I
Mm-hmm.
chose.
Mm-hmm.
And we read it and we were talking about it. And a kid that I know is not having, he didn't have a terrible life, but like, he was just in a small town, wasn't planning on going anywhere. We were just talking about it. And he raised his hand and he said something that just, I was like, you get it. It sunk in seventh grade. You get it. And I was just so excited for this kid, because if he continues to get it like that, he's going to have such a better life as a result. And then imagine if he just got that from all of his teachers, right? The power of having just that positive financial example at school was going to be incredible if we can get this message of financial empowerment out to every teacher.
I will say, kind of like a turning point in my own business was during the pandemic. I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, because everyone is in lockdown. I was like, at least if I'm going to be in lockdown, I need to be like in the trees, in the forest, in the mountains, or whatever. And I had joined the board for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I said to the board, I would love to teach a workshop for the Big Brothers Big Sisters and their littles on like personal finance. And so I first of all, like it was like a little bit of red tape to like get it done, and like they're like, we don't have a budget, like whatever. And I'm always a proponent, even if it's for a nonprofit, like they have to pay something for these workshops to help them understand that there is value that is being exchanged. This is not like about time, this is the value that people are going to get. Because I thought in my head, if one kid in that workshop turns out to change the trajectory of their personal finances, the whole workshop would have been worth it, right? And so interestingly, we decided, we invited the Big Brothers Big Sisters, and one parent was allowed to come to it as well. And so I'm supposed to be teaching the 10 to 13-year olds in there. And at the end, it was so fascinating. It was the Big Brother Big Sisters and the adults who were sharing these stories of all of the times that when they were their little's age, that they were told that they were going to be poor, that they were told that they were going to not have enough money. Like they remember, like they remember their parents fighting over money. They remember their parents saying, we don't got money for this, right? And these are adults now, they're like 20s, 30s, 40 years old, right? And so the fact that they were willing to bring these kids to this workshop on a Saturday morning, right? And the fact that these adults were probably for the first time sharing with these kids, saying like, you know what, some of the things that you're hearing and feeling are things that I felt too. And now in the book, I caught the H in crush stands for heal your money wounds. Now as an adult, I'm still working through those things, and we can catch some of these things early with these kids. The best way that we can do that as educators is to model that ourselves, right? So, like we talk about generational trauma and personal finance all the time, and we talk about parents passing on generational trauma to their kids, but teachers are the next people who spend the vast majority of the time with these same kids, right? So like imagine if you like as a kid, like I remember my kids, my parents like fighting over money, even when they were just being quiet, even when they weren't talking to each other, like I knew they were upset about something. Like kids are very astute. So like as a teacher, for you again, showing up into these classrooms and saying, you know what, y'all, I'm going to be wealthy. You know what, y'all, like the value that I'm bringing and changing your lives every day, like everyone in this room is going to be wealthy. Like that is such a different shift in not only your own like lifestyle and your own purpose, but like that vibrational energy that you're going to bring to your classroom every day is it doesn't have to even be spoken. And I'm so excited like that people like you are sharing these messages with this population, because it's just not talked about enough but more importantly, I think we need to start like putting a little bit more pressure on the gas pedal, because mental health has been something we talked about for a not a long time, not very long, but like it feels like during the pandemic that really came to light. But now it's this extra shift of like, not just don't talk negative to yourself, but like now respect yourself is like the next level we need to get to as an education population.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. So just so many good things here, but I want to make sure we have time to get to just two more quick, hopefully quick things. We have two money mistakes so you listed a number of money mistakes that people like are starting out with. And I love how the money mistakes are not, oh, you spent too much on a car, right? They are mental money mistakes that people are making. And two of them that I want to just focus on, because I feel like teachers do this all the time. It's over delivering and accepting burnout. Those two ideas. So can we talk about each of those? What does it mean to over deliver and why is that a mistake? And what does it mean to accept burnout? Why is that a mistake?
I had a feeling that those were going to be the ones we're going to talk about. Okay, so I was really struck. So I have an educator who's in my current Crush Club right now. So Crush Club is a like weekly community I host every Sunday from 9 to 10 a.m. We get together and we work on our finances together. And I have an educator in my group who, and I'm sure this is for many of you, who are pulling money out of their own pockets to supply the classroom with what they need, right? And I got so mad. I was so mad about this. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. But, apparently it's very common practice. And so when I say over delivering, it's this idea that we have to be the one who supplies everything for everybody. And teachers are kind of notorious for this. They're like, you know what? I know everyone else is burned out and everyone else is busy. So let me just take the burden on myself. Let me take the burden on myself. And once I found this out, the community uh in the Crush Club, like we pulled funds together and we sent them a donation of these workbooks that they needed, right? And so there's this idea in the over delivering, specifically over delivering silently with teachers, that I notice very much, right? Which is like, not only let me over deliver, but let me not burden other people with this. And then that inevitably leads to the second thing, which is burnout. You keep over delivering on things that ultimately, it might take a little effort to ask for the help, but in the long run, you will save yourself the time and energy and the money to be able to do this longer. What really also made me sad is like, during the pandemic, I had so many teachers coming to me basically ready to quit their jobs because like y'all got, hit the worst in terms of like, these unrealistic expectations of this automatically turning everything online and, doing all this like crazy stuff. Right. And the burnout piece is really something that I am working on with a lot of my coaching clients, where at the end of the day, and I'm learning this myself, is that everyone is really looking out for themselves. And so we have this expectation that, oh, shouldn't people know? Shouldn't people just offer it to us? The answer is no, they're not going to. They're not going to. So it is our responsibility to vocalize and communicate what it is that we need to be able to do our jobs well, and to fight for those things. And so many of the teachers that I have coached, I simply ask them like, well, did you ask your administrator? Like, and a lot of times they just that haven't even asked because they're like, oh, well, they're slammed too. I'm like, yeah, everyone is slammed all the time, right? But if you keep doing this, like you will absolutely get burned out by the end of it. And that is the worst thing that can happen to someone who is actually really good at their job, is to say, I don't want to do this anymore because I just I don't have a inch of energy to do this. And so when I talk about those in conjunction with each other, the over delivering is a huge component of burning out. We never get burnout from people who under deliver.
Yeah.
Right? It's always the overachievers and the people who are like, don't everyone see how hard it is that I'm working? Actually, no, they don't, because everyone is busy with their own stuff. And so you do have to vocalize. And so one of the remedies that I talk about later in the book is one of the 25 habits that teachers are pretty much the worst at that I have seen is negotiating. And so in later in the understand your worth, I write out some specific tips that you can use to negotiate your pay, and this is for any field, right? A lot of people, teachers are like, well, I can't negotiate my salary. I'm like, yeah, you can. If you tell them you're going to go somewhere else and you're going to go do something else and you're one of the best teachers there, they will figure out a way. I've seen it. I've seen it happen. And I have a client who is in the Chicago public school system, and we negotiated her pay and it worked. Right. So when I say you're over delivering and then you're burning out before you do that, one of the practical things I can tell you to do is to start practicing this idea of like at least attempting to negotiate. And if it's not pay, it's negotiating your hours. It's negotiating like, hey, you're not going to put me on every committee this year. Because I see that a lot. I see a lot of teachers who are like serving on all these extra committees and not getting extra pay for it. So it's like, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to get paid for the things that I do. I'm not going to take on 5 more committees this year. There's other ways to negotiate beyond pay that can help you curb both the over delivering and the burnout. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer because I'm just very hell-bent on this.
This is my soapbox as well, so don't worry about it. I'm always preaching to the choir about this one, but it's just like, well, not preaching to the choir, preaching to the people that need to be in the choir. The whole idea of like, don't put your money into your classroom, right? If every teacher stopped putting money into their classroom, do you know what would happen? Schools would come to a grinding halt, and they would figure out a way to pay you more money or pay for it, right? Like we're enabling them to continue to just take it from us by putting our money into the classroom. So, I mean, I never, and I'm telling you this right now, I, in 8 years of teaching, never put a cent of my own into my classroom, right? I went to the main office person and I said, do we have a budget for teachers? 2 schools I went to, the answer was yes. 1 school, no. I went to my department head. Does our department have a budget for supplies? Turns out we did. I went to my principal. Do we have a principal's discretionary fund? Turns out we did, right? That principal's discretionary fund, they have to use it before the end of the year or they lose it. And no teacher is going and asking, hey, I need 20 more expo markers. Can you buy them for me? Instead, we're just going out and buying it ourselves when the the principal has money that he could use to buy you expo markers. Now, if there's none of those options at your school, maybe you need to find a different school. But the point is that if you try, you can find a way to get what you need without paying for it. If you just ask is so important. Just ask. Don't just open up your wallet automatically. And if none of those work, right, there are websites where you can say, hey, I need this for my classroom, and people will donate for you to put it into your classroom. There are opportunities out there. I would recommend that every teacher stops spending money on their classroom immediately. And I'm even extreme enough that I'd say, don't buy cute borders for your classroom. Don't buy fun LED lights. Don't buy a lamp. Like, just don't, right? Make your class Spartan and boring and be like, I'm sorry. If you want me to have some fun, engaging things in my classroom, you're going to have to pay for it, because that is how we're going to change it, not by just applying it. I mean, I have seen people's classrooms that look like they had spent $1,000 on it to get set up. And I'm just like, why? Why did you do that to yourself? So I that over delivering thing, and then the time piece, right? Teachers are paid, and the reason we are underpaid is because we are paid for 8 hours a day, 10 months out of the year. But we feel like we're underpaid mostly because we work more hours than that for 10 months of the year, and we work over the summer in a lot of instances. Stop.
That's right.
Right. That's my advice. Just stop over delivering, and you won't burn out. Like I had teachers who are like, feeling jaded. They're like, oh, there's all these things that it's just terrible, and like they're complaining, and I never felt that. And the reason I didn't feel it is because I wasn't over delivering. It's like, oh, a new thing, yeah, let's implement it. Oh, darn, another new thing, let's implement that. But I'm not going to spend 3 extra hours after school is over implementing it. When the time is done for the end of the day, I leave, because my job is over, right? So that is the way, by setting boundaries on your money, setting boundaries on your time, you can avoid over delivering, which avoids burnout. Anyway, so also my soapbox moment, just wanted to get that out there.
Yes.
So glad that
Yes.
you're seeing that.
I'm seeing it from I'm seeing it from perspective of like being the coach of these folks, right? And I'm like, and this is the thing. Like, if anyone ever coaches with me, I always have to warn them. I'm like, unless if you don't like a mirror up to your face, like I'm not a good good coach for people. Because like my question for those teachers all the time is like, who made you do that? Like, and I'm generally not. I'm not even trying to be sassy. Sometimes I'm like, who said that? Like, who told you you had to do that? And they always like kind of fumble over that. They're like, well, it's it's unsaid, it's unspoken. I'm like, well, if it wasn't actually spoken, then we're not doing it, right? And one of my kind of favorite examples is one of the people who now does contract work for me. She started out as a music teacher, and then she took those skill sets and she went into a corporate company, and she's just crushing it. And we got her to the point where she is maxing out her 401k, 22,000, or now this year, $23,000 a year on for someone who used to make a teacher's salary. That would have been like half of her salary back then, right? And the major shift that she and I had to work on as a coach, you would have thought it was like the math and teaching her like what to invest in. It was like, stop doing stuff no one told you to do. Like, I had to say that to her. I'm like, why are you working past these hours? Are they paying you more? Are they paying you more for this? Like, I'm not following. And what I think is really challenging, and there's the fine line, right? Obviously, as someone, for me, like like take for example this very book tour that I'm on, right? Do I get paid to do any of these things? No, right? But did I like kind of mark out like, okay, how much time am I going to spend on these? Right. And do I like, when people ask me, oh, well, can you do this podcast interview on a Saturday morning? Nope. Right. Like there's still lots of boundaries that I put into place for this. Right. And the biggest thing that I think teachers often miss as well is like, what is the return on investment for the things that you are purchasing? So like you said, those borders, cute, so cute. Your classroom will be the cutest one, Pinterest worthy, all of that stuff, or whatever. What's the return on investment? What's the return on investment? So even if you are going to spend a little bit of money somewhere else or whatever, like you have to ask yourself, well, then how am I going to actually get this money back? Whether it's going to save me time. If you're going to spend money anywhere, for example, like I have a client who, like as a teacher, she wasn't like that familiar with like how to use Excel. And so she took a class upon herself that she was going to, she could use that skill set anywhere. Right. But then once she got really good at with Excel, like, oh my gosh, her organizational skills with the things that she had to do in the classroom, like she was able to cut out a couple hours a week on just administration tasks. So like, I promise you that one Excel course was probably worth more in return on investment than buying cute borders for the bulletin board. Right. So I love that we're having this conversation because this is hard stuff, and it's easier said than done to say, well, I'm going to not go above and beyond for my kids. But that, like, we come back to how we started this episode, which is like the best way you can go above and beyond for your kids is to be the role model of what a healthy, like wealthy mindset and behavior looks like so that they can model that after someone that they've actually met in real life.
Oh my goodness. That was just so powerful. The best way to be there for your kids is to be a role model, right? It's just like, bam, right? You don't have to have all these extra cutesy things. You don't have to, show up for them with these expensive things you're adding in your classroom. Just be a good role model. That is what they most need. That drop the mic. Love it. Nailed it. Okay. Just got two more questions for you as we're wrapping up.
Okay.
You can either pull this from your book or just what you are seeing in your life. What is your number one tip for teachers to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life?
I'm going to say this specifically for teachers. Normally, I would say budgeting, but that's like a very canned answer. Specifically for teachers, I want you to get very, very familiar and understanding of your benefits and your retirement plans and the things that are offered to you as a government employee, because y'all have access to certain things that I never had access to. So I have a client who was a teacher for 30 years, and she was able to retire like at 50 something instead of at 65, because she was really, really smart of putting into the retirement plans that were available to her. And she was also really smart about using up those benefits, because your benefits are actually pretty good comparative to a lot of like corporate companies. I work at startups and the benefits are trash, right? So the biggest thing I can say is like people are sleeping on that. Like I have a client, the same client who was a administrator at a in Chicago public schools, and she really did not understand her retirement plan. And so I had to study it myself and then like explain to her what certain things meant on it. And by the time we ended coaching, she was maxing out her retirement plan. And that's, I mean, that one decision to max out her retirement plan and uh and to be able to do that consistently year over year. She's been doing that for 3 years now. She has built up more in her retirement plan than the entire last 15 years. Right. So I would say that specifically for teachers, especially if you're working in a public school system, really, really like this upcoming enrollment period or whatever, like ask all the questions. Go to the HR and say, what does this mean? What does that mean? So if I put in this much money, how much money does that save up for me? Like that same teacher, the other person that I said that was a music teacher, she was able to work in there long enough to be eligible for like the pension plan. She was in the school system for 5 years. And so now when she retires, she's eligible to have like those health benefits, right? Like in her retirement. There's like some stuff that I was just like, this is wild. Like I had no idea that this stuff existed in certain school districts or in certain states. So for anyone who's listening to this, like if you haven't like actually read your benefits plans from cover to cover and the details in it, you're probably missing out on some very easy dollars.
I love it. I mean, so just to give you an example of what you're talking about, I was doing these numbers for Texas. So I mean, it's different state to state for pensions, but for Texas, the last 5 years that you teach is how they calculate your pension. So if you taught for 30 years, and the last 5 years you taught, you made $50,000, which is kind of low, right? You're contributing 7.7%. So that's around $320 those last 5 years, but much lower earlier on because we start out lower than that, right? $320, those last 5 years, making $50,000, your pension is going to be around $35,000, right? That is equivalent to 800 and something thousand dollars in a 401k for a non-teacher person. Like for them to draw down that much money using that 4% rule, right? For them to get there, they would have had to, put in like 400 and I think it's $420, something like that, right? So they would have had to put in that much every single month for their entire career to get to the same spot that you are by just teaching, at that last, $50,000 for that last 5 years, putting in even less than that. Like it's just so much smaller for you to be able to get that benefit. And it doesn't require the discipline either, right? You don't have to take the money out of your paycheck. It just happens automatically, right? So there are so many amazing benefits financially for teachers in retirement. But if you don't know what they are, then you could end up teaching till 65, or you could end up teaching, long past your expiration date, because there's some teachers that are keep going even though they shouldn't be. When if you had that understanding of how it all worked, you could get out at 60, 55, 50, and still have the retirement that you are hoping for. And it's incredibly powerful. And once again, since we want to be those good role models for those kids, we don't want to become a bad role model by not being at our best in those final years. So that's just, I love that number one tip. That's great. Okay, last question for you. How can teachers get in contact with you?
Easy. Okay. CrushYourMoneyGoals.com. It's the same title as my book is my website. And on there you can find, I host regular classes, both live and like in person and online. If you like long form content, I post videos weekly on my YouTube channel on all different topics. And so please subscribe to my YouTube channel because I'm trying to work on that this year. And then if you are into more short form type of stuff, I'm at Bernadette Joy, primarily on Instagram, spelled with the word debt. So it's easy to figure out which one I am. And for anyone who's listening to this, I would love to offer you, because you are doing, like, literally, I feel like you're doing the Lord's work. Is if you email me hello@crushyourmoneygoals.com, and you let me know that you listen to this podcast episode, I will send you one of my courses. That's $47. I would love to give that to you for the new year. So please email me at hello@crushmoneygoals.com, mention this podcast, and I will send you that course for free.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. Thank you, Bernadette, for that. If you guys want the links to all of those things that she just mentioned, you can go to teachyourmoneyshow.com/podcast and you can find the link to the show notes there, or you can go to your podcast player and go to the description there and you can find the direct link to this show with Bernadette, and you'll be able to find all of those links there. Highly recommend you take advantage of this. Now, Bernadette, I know I said no, you're done, but last question. When's your book coming out? When is that available?
Oh yeah, so the book is actually out now.
Yay!
It's in Barnes and Nobles and Amazon. There's the audiobook if you want to listen to my audiobook while grading papers. um And I just got really great news yesterday that my book was listed on Oprah's platform as one of the top books for professional. I'm sorry, top books for personal development in 2025, alongside Mel Robbins and Gretchen Rubin and some other people. I was at a sushi restaurant and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I yelled some words that you should not yell out in public when this happened. And so, if you don't believe me that the book is good, at least believe Oprah that it is.
Well, you should believe me too. I like to curate what I bring onto the show, and I met Bernadette and said, yeah, we can come on. But I started reading her book, and I was like, all right, we got to get Bernadette on here. I was super excited. I've been enjoying it. I haven't finished yet, but it's on my nightstand to finish because it's that good. So make sure you get the book, start reading it, and just enjoy the mindset shift that happens. Because when you can change your mindset, you can become wealthy. Bernadette, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a ton of fun.
Thanks for having me.
Wow, Bernadette, that was a great conversation. I loved talking about these mindset shifts because mindset really is the foundation to all good money decisions. Now let's talk about the Cliff Notes, the most important things from this episode. Cliff Notes are brought to you by me. If you would like to get coaching to work on your mindset, you can go to teachyourmoneyshow.com/coaching to work on your mindset with me one-on-one. Whether we do an episode together here or we do it individually, I'd love to help you out. Now on to the Cliff Notes. The number one thing that Bernadette said is money doesn't make you worthwhile, right? You need to build your self-worth internally, not based on how much money you have. And fortunately, teachers have that internal wealth, that self-worth that comes from doing something meaningful in the world. Number two, speak to yourself positively. I love this. Say positive things to yourself out loud to combat the negative internal things we have, because as you do that, your brain will start to believe the positive things and you'll have positive results. It's so powerful to have positive self-affirmation. Number three, if you can do fourth grade math, you can be wealthy. We already have the skill sets we need to be wealthy as teachers, right? We do fourth grade math, we manage multiple tasks, we analyze information and data. There's so much stuff that we already do that wealthy people do as teachers. So just use those skills to become wealthy. Number four, treat yourself as you treat others, right? You want to be respectful to yourself as you are respectful to others. Don't say something to yourself you wouldn't say to your student. Don't say something to yourself you wouldn't say to your student. I love that. Treat yourself with as much respect as them. Number five, negotiate. You need to take control of your destiny. Negotiate your pay if you can, negotiate your time, negotiate your responsibilities, whatever it is, it's all negotiable. If you're a good teacher, they're not going to want to lose you. So negotiate. Number six, be the best role model you can for your kids. The best way to be there for them is to be a role model. I love this. It is so powerful because we're not trying to go above and beyond in things. We're trying to go above and beyond with our character. And as we show success to our kids, they will naturally follow suit and become more successful. And then number 7, understand your benefits. We have amazing benefits as teachers. I know it doesn't feel like it sometimes, especially as our insurance premiums go up and seem to be more than our raise every year. But we seem to have but we know we have some pretty amazing benefits, especially with that pension. So just be aware that you have amazing benefits as a government employee, as a public school teacher, and don't discount those, because the value of those in retirement or just throughout your career is really hard to understate. All right, so those are the Cliff Notes, the most amazing things that Bernadette said. Once again, if you want to get the bonuses that she mentioned, like that free course, or check out the book, you can go to teachermoneyshow.com/podcast, and you can find the show notes for all the shows there, or you can go to the description in your podcast player, and you can find the direct link to the page for this show. Now remember, as a teacher, you're already rich. Your wallet just needs to catch up. Are you worried you won't have enough money to retire? Or maybe you just don't know how you're going to get out of all of this debt. Whatever your situation is, I can help you. Go to teachermoneyshow.com/guest and fill out the form there, and you can come on the show for free coaching, or we can meet one-on-one to discuss your needs. I look forward to talking to you.